Right now, your brain is executing a massive amount of hidden work, regulating blood pressure, parsing grammar, and holding your posture upright. To pull that off, the brain acts as a committee of localized experts, a dedicated region for tracking edges, another for processing sound, and a system monitoring your heartbeat. They all run silently in parallel, and despite the immense computational power required to manage all of those systems at once, you feel absolutely none of it. The goal is to find the exact physical signature that separates those silent circuits from the ones that actually feel like something. Occasionally, a single thread of that silent data lights up. It is seized by the whole mind at once, and it becomes something you can name, report, and act on. For decades, measuring that transition from dark processing to conscious thought was treated as a purely philosophical problem. Global Workspace Theory changed that. It proposes a testable, physical mechanism, a central network where localized data is broadcast to the entire brain. This provides a physical framework for the experience of awareness, a mechanism scientists have learned to dial down, shut off, or force wide open. When a stimulus enters the brain, it has to fight for attention. If you flash a word on a screen too briefly, the sensory regions fire and the meaning is retrieved, but the energy pulse quickly fades out. You never consciously see the word. But if that signal gathers enough strength, it crosses a threshold and triggers an all-or-nothing self-amplifying eruption known as ignition. This eruption happens on a specific timeline. Roughly 270 to 300 milliseconds after a stimulus hits your eyes, the signal either dies out locally or it catches fire globally. When it ignites, the activity surges forward into the fronto-parietal cortex. That local visual data is suddenly blasted out, making it instantly available everywhere in the network. Under this theory, this specific brain-wide broadcast is the physical definition of a conscious experience. To prove this global broadcast is the source of awareness, researchers have to be able to deliberately break it. When a patient goes under general anesthesia, their sensory cortex continues to receive physical input. The anesthetic simply prevents that 300 millisecond ignition from occurring. Doctors use this mechanism to evaluate patients with disorders of consciousness. By scanning the brain for that late fronto-parietal surge, neurologists can probe whether a coma patient is still home behind the silence. Clinical anesthesia and comas demonstrate that local sensory processing is not enough. A conscious mind requires the long-range global connection, which raises a different question. What happens if we manipulate the ignition threshold in the exact opposite direction? Psychedelics do not shut the workspace down. Instead, these molecules appear to lower the brain's ignition threshold. Normally, the brain maintains a strict door policy, keeping most of its activity local and unconscious. With a lowered threshold, that policy relaxes. Raw, fragmented local data suddenly floods the global workspace. This flooding explains the experience of ego dissolution. The cohesive, everyday story of you gets overwhelmed by an influx of raw data hitting the main stage all at once. An altered high-entropy state is the physical result of a brain broadcasting far too much of itself to itself. If the unconscious brain is already handling massive amounts of complex work on its own, we have to ask why evolution bother building this broadcast system at all. The limitation of localized experts is rigid isolation. A visual cortex and a motor system cannot easily coordinate to solve a novel, unexpected problem. The biological job of consciousness is to force information sharing across the entire brain. Whenever you deliberately override a hardwired habit or hold a complex plan together across distractions, you are relying on this global broadcast to coordinate the response. Awareness serves a concrete function. It is a vital tool for flexible, whole-brain coordination. We must be intellectually honest about the limits of this model. The global workspace is a theory of access. It maps how data is moved around and reported by the brain's physical architecture. There are competing frameworks, like integrated information theory. The ultimate question of why this physical broadcast feels like a lived inner experience remains unsolved. Regardless of the ongoing scientific debates, we now have a physical metric for a process that used to be invisible. The science of the mind is now grounded in observation. We have identified a biological stage and a mechanism we can finally watch ignite.